Hello, everybody. I'm Andrew Floyd, and thanks for being with us at the 9th annual virtual Yampa Valley Crane Festival. It probably goes without saying that cranes are the star of the show at a, crane festival, but festival organizer Nancy Merrill and I have been talking for several years now about the peripheral interest in all the other birds in the Yampa Valley during the crane festival. So I have a story to tell you. Several years ago, I proposed to Nancy that we offer a sort of complement to crane watching, what I referred to as the Osprey Big Sit. The idea was simple. Participants would literally sit down in a park in downtown Steamboat Springs and watch ospreys at a nesting platform. I learned all about osprey natural history and was ready to give a real-time, real-life talk about the ospreys of the Yampa Valley. But there was just one problem. The ospreys had already migrated away. What to do? Well, that's what the rest of this presentation is all about. I'm going to try to fire up screen share mode now so that you can see a presentation on the birds of the Yampa Valley that aren't cranes and aren't even ospreys. Okay, along with my dad, who will be joining me shortly, I'm going to be talking to you about all the other birds you can see. Back to the osprey story. There weren't any. Well, there was actually one, but it was just a migrant flying over. However, there were lots of these. This is a broad-tailed hummingbird, a species that is prolific at flowers in the Yampa Valley all summer long and into early September. So back on that osprey-less day, my dad and I were like, let's turn this into a hummingbird field trip. It was very impromptu, sort of like this presentation, but it was a huge success. Each year we've done the hummingbird outing, and each year there have been more and more participants. In 2019, we had more than 100 people. By the way, along with showing you pictures of common birds around the Yampa Valley, this presentation is going to feature their sounds. Even if you don't know the sound of a broad-tailed hummingbird, you know the sound of a broad-tailed hummingbird. That shrill trilling heard from first light to sundown every day of the summer in and around Steamboat is one of the most characteristic sounds of our region. By the way, it's not a vocalization, it's a so-called sonation, produced by the wings of the adult male. Who knew? Okay, I'm going to turn things over to my dad now. He's going to take you on a whirlwind tour of the late summer birds of our region that are not cranes. Over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Andrew, and hello, everybody. I'm Ted Floyd, and I'm going to, as Andrew just said, now take you on a whirlwind tour of some of the birds that we can see and hear while we're looking at cranes and listening to cranes in the Yampa Valley. Andrew has just shown us a little broad-tailed hummingbird. Let's go from the very small to the very large now and take a look at this Swainson's hawk, one of the gratifyingly common raptors in the Yampa Valley during the summer months. This is a juvenile. The bird is, in this picture, probably about 2 months old, and its parents have already left the nest. And amazingly, this bird, in just a week or so, will migrate all the way to Argentina. This bird is not in the Yampa Valley. It's nowhere in Colorado. It's practically not really in the United States. Almost all of them, as I said, are in southern South America during the summer months. You can hear them now. The juveniles are quite fussy. They give a sound like this. You can hear that sort of harsh scream, especially in open areas. This particular bird was photographed along Morgan Bottoms Road, just north of the Carpenter Ranch. Another bird that's going to be leaving our area very soon, in fact, they're on their way out already, is the familiar barn swallow, one of the most widespread birds on Earth, actually. It occurs all over the Americas and all over the Old World as well. It can sometimes be seen far out at sea. It gives a soft chittering sound. Often heard like this around barns and outbuildings, also along roads, highway rest stops, anywhere like this. One of the truly common signs and sounds of summer all around the Yampa Valley. Staying with the theme here of little birds, I'm going to move things along to a particularly small but very common bird of the Yampa Valley during the warmer months. This is a house wren, and this is a bird that may sort of lack in the visual appearance category. It's a fairly drab and uniformly colored bird, but it sings a spectacular song. That sort of dry bubbly is just a few sizes too loud, I think, for a bird so small. It's one of our smallest land birds, one of our smallest birds altogether. This is our drab wren. Next up is a sparrow, and I think we often think of sparrows as drab, but some of the sparrows of the Yampa Valley are spectacular, like this bird, the green-tailed towhee. It's so spectacular that we don't even call it a sparrow. We call it a towhee, but it really is a kind of sparrow. It's green and yellow and brown and gray and white and black and red. It's a very large sparrow, and it sings a beautiful song. This bird is particularly common in scrubby areas with sagebrush. Morgan Bottoms Road near Hayden is a very good place to see green-tailed towhees, but at migration at this time of the year, they can be found almost anywhere. For a more typical sparrow, let's take a look at the little Savannah Sparrow here. So this is one of my favorites. It's a dumpy little bird, but it sings a sort of a strange song. I like to say that the song goes like this: please, 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 please stay. See if you can hear that. Stay. This bird is prolific in hayfields, wet hayfields, especially the ones that are covered with mosquitoes and sort of standing water. The Carpenter Ranch is another great place to see them. Hayfields all along the Yampa River from Steamboat to west of Hayden are a great place for the Savannah Sparrow. Okay, so we've looked now at a few of the very common breeding birds in the Yampa Valley. I want to talk about some of the birds that come from the highlands now and migrate through the lowlands and can be found in Steamboat and elsewhere. This is an exemplary bird in that category. This is a western tanager. This is the bird that is famously red and yellow and black during the summer months, but by the fall, many of the birds are this more sort of a drab yellow, olive, gray color. They give a very exuberant song during the summer months. In migration, we don't hear the song very often, but we hear this strange staccato picky-duck call like this. And that's it for the western tanager, that loud, snappy picky-tuck. So this is a bird we see in our upland forests and other wooded areas throughout the Steamboat area. I also want us to keep in mind that we can see migrant birds in our wetlands, species like this one. This is a true transient through our area. It breeds well to our north, it winters well to our south, and we see it only during the spring, especially in April and May, and then the fall in September into October. It's the greater yellow legs. It's one of our bigger sandpipers, and it gives this very sort of startling and startled sounding beep, 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 just like this. So if you hear that sound, especially in a wet meadow or along the Yampa River, you know that you have a greater yellow legs. I'm going to backtrack a little bit now and talk about the birds that we can see here sort of in the heart of summer. I know it's September now, but cranes are with us all summer long. And we're going to take a look at some of the most common summer birds and the exact sorts of habitats where you would expect to find sandhill cranes. Most notable among these is probably this bird, the bobolink, which can be found again, like the Savannah Sparrow, in hay meadows in and around Hayden and also closer to Steamboat Springs. It's got this striking looking sort of upside down tuxedo look, bright above, dark below, and it sings a wild and jangling song that reminds me a little bit of R2-D2 in Star Wars. The bobolink sings this song. Well, I said he sounds like R2-D2. Maybe it's more like a whole convention of R2-D2s out there. One of our loudest and certainly one of our most spectacular birds is breeding in the Yampa Valley. Another conspicuous and prominent and loud bird, I promise the next recording won't be quite as loud, is the eastern kingbird. Despite being called eastern, it is actually the most common kingbird in the wet lowland meadows, especially right along the Yampa River here in the Yampa River Valley area. The eastern kingbird is a particularly pugilistic bird. It seems to want to sort of throw a hissy fit at every single bird that comes by, and it gives these really odd sort of like bobolink, sort of mechanical sounds. They remind me of a live wire sputtering. Yeah, so just that kind of continual sputtering, that sort of snappy mechanical sound, I think is the best way that I could describe the eastern kingbird. From the rather starkly colored gray and white eastern kingbird, let's go to one of our most colorful breeding birds in the Yampa Valley, the Laruli Bunting. This is the all-American bird, red, white, and blue, as you can see, or we'll call that maybe white, blue, and sort of rusty, but it's as close as we can get. You can see it appears to be in an oak tree there, a small scrubby oak, and these birds absolutely abound on the very sunny oak-laden hillsides north of the Carpenter Ranch, and really anywhere where you have wide open habitats on shrubby hillsides. This bird is an exuberant singer. And that sort of combination of whistles and buzzes is one of the really characteristic sounds, as I said, of those sun-kissed oaky hillsides all across the Yampa Valley. Going back into the marshes, we come across this bird. We like to call him the banana head. He's also the yellow-headed blackbird, a stunning bird, and one that gives a really peculiar song, one that's rated as sort of a decidedly unpleasant by many hearers, but I consider it to be a very beautiful bird song. And that's a sound that's familiar all day long and even well into the nighttime hours in cattail marshes all across the Yampa Valley. A very strange thing about the yellow-headed blackbird is that all yellow-headed blackbirds throw their heads to the left when they sing. Every yellow-headed blackbird is a left-headed yellow-headed blackbird. All right, so those were some of the very common summer birds around the Yampa Valley. I thought we'd take a look now as we begin to sort of wind up here at some of the birds that we can see at this time of the year in the fall and even into the winter. Here is one of the most common of all during the fall months in Steamboat Springs. By the way, also very, very common in the spring. This is a Cedar Waxwing. This bird is here throughout the summer months. A few actually remain into the winter, although they're joined at that time of the year by the larger and rarer Bohemian waxwing. The sound of this bird is just an endless high-pitched trill like this. It goes on and on and on like this. And although most songbirds like the Cedar Waxwing have different types of vocalization, songs and calls and flight calls, the sounds of the Cedar Waxwing are all the same, just this endless trilling like this. Reminds me a little bit of the broad-tailed hummingbirds that we heard earlier, but if you hear that sound in the dead of winter, you can be pretty sure that you're listening to a Cedar Waxwing and not to a hummingbird that would have migrated away long ago. Cedar Waxwing is a bird, again, that you should be seeing in great abundance right now, and certainly well into the fall and even into the winter. Speaking of birds that make their way into the winter months, another such bird in the Steamboat area is the song sparrow. Now, this is one of our common summer birds, also here in the spring and the fall, but they do persist sometimes into the winter, especially in warmer areas right along the Yampa River, for example. Bird is called the song sparrow because even among sparrows, it sings a decidedly great song, one which goes like this. And that song, which they actually begin singing as early as December, December is the start of their spring, is one of the most welcome signs of spring. Again, especially in places like Steamboat that have such a prolonged winter. From a remarkable vocalist, let's go to one that sings a rather simple song. I'm not even sure we could call it simple, or sorry, we couldn't even call it a song, and it certainly is very simple. That's the common merganser, a bird that's present here all year long. They breed here, they winter here. You'll be seeing them right through the dead of winter wherever there's open water. I want to say a brief thing about their breeding in our area because it's spectacular. As you go west of Steamboat Springs, and you come to those really high cliffs as you sort of round the bend toward the railroad crossing there at US 40, if you look way up into the cliffs where there are sometimes mountain lions, but more commonly prairie falcons and white-throated swifts, the hen common mergansers actually tend their nests way up there. And you wonder how on earth do the babies ever get down to the Yampa River? So mom actually kicks them out of the nest hundreds of feet high. They land at the bottom. The little fuzzballs make it just fine. And the dangerous part is that they have to walk right across US 40. Mom ushers them across and into the Yampa River, and off they go. So this is the bird that spends probably 99% of its flying life on the water, but it starts off by being knocked out of its cliffside haunts and then marched across US 40 and into the Yampa River. By the way, the call of the common merganser is just a couple of very sort of rough, short woof, woof sounds like this. So if you hear that sort of muffled woof, woof, you know that you're listening to a common merganser. want to just point out that there are some birds, along with the common merganser, that are here all year round. And one of them is the Eurasian collared-dove. Now, this is a bird that is around all year round, but that wasn't always the case. I was actually here. I just arrived in Colorado when the first Eurasian collared-dove showed up. It was at the Carpenter Ranch on a cold day in spring in 2003, so about 17 years ago, 17 and a half years ago, and it's been here ever since. This is a bird that, unlike most other birds which stop singing in the winter, will sing all winter long. You probably know the song already, but if you don't, it goes like this. So that endless, repetitious three-part song, hoo, 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 just like that, supposedly is the Greek word for 18. The bird is supposedly saying decocto, decocto, and that's why it has the scientific name Streptopelia decaocto, because it sings the number 18 over and over again. Birds like the Eurasian collared-dove remind us that there's always something to see and learn. There are things about the collared-dove, as common as they have become, that surprise me every day of the year. I actually like collared-doves, perhaps unlike some bird watchers, because they teach us so many valuable lessons about bird biology. Speaking of lessons about bird biology, here's an image of somebody you have been hearing from a bit earlier this afternoon, shown here at a younger age. He is holding up a feather of a red-naped sapsucker, one of the most common woodpeckers in our area. I do not have a photo of a red-naped sapsucker, but I can tell you that if the bird were nearby, he would be protesting the loss of that tail feather, the retrix, with a call like this one. Yeah, so that sort of descending nasal whine is the very common call of the red-naped sapsucker. Well, I have finished up the remarks that I wanted to share with you all this afternoon. Basically, as I said, just take you on a tour, a very quick, a very eclectic, a very whirlwind tour of the birds of the Yampa River Valley. But before we take leave of you, I actually want to turn the proceedings back over to Andrew, who will share a few final words with you.
Well, we've hoped you've enjoyed this sampler of late summer birds from the Yampa River Valley. We'd like to thank John Lowry at the American Birding Association for technical support, and we're grateful to Nancy Merrill and her band of Craniacs for having us. And thanks, of course, to all of you out there who have helped watch this little show. We're disappointed that we couldn't see you in person this year, but we're looking forward to seeing you for the 10th annual Yampa Valley Crane Festival, September 2nd through 5th, 2021. And we're looking forward to seeing and hearing these guys. Thanks. Good night.